Feel empty? Like something is missing? Fantasia helps the disenchanted become enchanted by inspiring them to become conscious, holistic creators who dance with life. Each week we explore new ideas that expand consciousness, increase love, and enhance magical awareness. Now, here's your host, Laura Giles.
The best job in the world. I get to talk to really magical people and share their stories with you. I think this is really important because it helps us to know that living an enchanted life as an enchanted being is possible, and can give us some tips on how to do that in a way that's authentic to us. And today I'm talking with Aaron French. Aaron has had an interesting path, and I'm going to let him tell you all about that. So welcome, Aaron.
Thanks so much. It's great to be here.
Aaron, I think that anyone who is tuned into their spirituality but hasn't had an awakening yet really wants that moment. And I know you had a really profound one, and I can't wait to talk to you about that. But before I do, I'd really like to hear about your path there, because I think that's probably a really good story too. So what was your early life like?
I mean, my early life was, my parents were hippies early. And so I didn't go to normal school until fourth grade. When I was really little, I lived on a commune, and then I lived on like a little small farm. So I was out in nature all the time, connected, running around in the grass and, being outside like all the time. And it wasn't until like fourth grade that I went to, a regular school. And that actually was a really tough transition for me, where I sort of lost my childhood magic connection to all things in nature and was sort of put in the box of, modern normal society. And then it wasn't really until college when I knew I wanted to be a scientist, and I chose to be an ecologist. And I went to Costa Rica for a study abroad program, and I fell in love with being in the tropics. And so my first job was as a tropical ecologist. So I traveled the world living in tents, living out in platforms in the middle of the jungle for years of my life, just living, and I was studying nature. But what that meant was I would sit out in the forest all day, every day, or maybe walk slowly with really firm attention on the world around me in terms of the birds or monkeys or fruits that I was studying for that research. Years later, I realized that I was doing like years of meditation while I was sitting and watching birds or monkeys or doing my work, right? Without
Yeah, I
realizing
think
it.
that's a wonderful beginning and foundation for a spiritual life.
Thank you.
Did you have any significant mentors, so human mentors?
I did, but not until a little bit later. My first mentor that I really realized was a teacher, capital T for me, was one of my first few jobs after college. I was working up in Colorado in Aspen, and there was this man who made drums and rattles, like rawhide drums and rattles, and I wanted to learn that craft. So he agreed to have me come to his cabin for the weekend and study with him. I went up to his place, and we were like the first morning, I was like, okay, let's get to work. I want to learn this. I was still like sort of young and impatient. And he was like, Aaron, just relax and sip your tea and look at the aspens, just be here. And it wasn't until years later that I realized he was really my first deep teacher of non-duality and connecting with the moment, and really deeply grateful to him. So he was my first. After I came back from a couple years in the jungle, I turned my back on being an academic. I realized I didn't want to be a scientist full time. That life was just too constrained for me. I actually initiated with a tantric guru and lived with him for a while. And after that, I had a Taoist teacher for a number of years, and then other teachers emerged as well. So I've studied on a variety of paths for years. Now I would say that, the most of my influence is from Taoism. The teachings that I carry forward most deeply in my heart and inform my spirit are Taoist, but I do pull from all the other traditions as well that I've been,
I think in our culture, I think that a lot of people want this mentor who's going to just pour themselves into you and mold you. And we're a culture that's overflowing with coaches. There's a coach for everything. And my experience is that that's not really what it's about. And what I'm hearing you say too is that that's not how it worked for you. But I do think mentorship is really important. Can you talk about how having those people helped you?
And I think you really hit on a really important point, right? So our mentors, our teachers, our guides, they're not here to, pour themselves into you, as you say, and like change your world or sort of tap you on the forehead and all of a sudden your world is different or something like that. It's not like that. It's, and that's really a reason why now, like, I call myself a spiritual mentor is what I like to say, just because I'm here to like support people on their journey, share my experiences, but really from a realm of like deep humility, which is like, I pulled from people's experience and they showed me techniques and life experience to give me a touch point that like, oh no, I'm not going crazy, right? These things are real. This road has been traveled by those before me, and I can get some touch points of these experience to just ground my own unfolding, right? And certainly the techniques I've learned have been valuable, and just some frameworks I've learned have been valuable. But at the end of the day, like, the way my journey unfolded was unique to me and my path, just like it will be
Yeah.
for everyone else.
Yeah.
And, we're just here, those of us who are speaking about our journey are just here again to provide a touch point for some other person who might see something of themselves in these stories that we're telling about, or whomever else they might be listening to, right?
Yeah.
Just here to
Yeah.
provide a touch point that like, no, these journeys are universal. We're all walking these paths, even though they might look different. They might cross in various ways. And how can we inform each other and we'll all support each other on the journey?
Now, you studied a lot of different things. So you
I
said
have.
Taoism, Tantra. I know that you also studied Buddhism,
Yeah, that's right.
mediumship, the Akashic records.
That's right.
What would you suggest that people do in order to get in touch with their center in a grounded way?
I mean, I also have like a really active mind. And so like I sort of, I read books like crazy, and I'm just sort of always so that's just sort of my personality more even than like a spiritual necessity. The fact that I've sort of wandered widely and just sort of sipped the nectar from all the different traditions is just because I think it's fun. But like, none of that's necessary. If you have a path that you feel aligned with, that sustains you, that you feel grounded with, like any of these paths are enough, right? If you connect with it and you connect fully, and really like my deepest recommendation for anyone who's not sure would really right now be just to go outside and walk in nature and ground and connect, and have the trees be your teacher, have the water be your teacher, have the sky be your teacher, and then they will lead you if you so need. Like, you will be led to whomever other resource you might need, whether it's a book that a friend might recommend or some random person might come in your life and look totally different than you might expect, but maybe give you a nugget of something that carries you to this next opening for you, etc. Like, we're in a time of awakening, right? So many of us are feeling this. We're in a time of deep, deep awakening and transformation. And so the energies around us on the earth are so much more available than they were a generation ago or beyond. And so, the trees themselves, the sky, the earth are so much more available now to communicate, to speak with us, to transmit their knowledge and truth to us, for us, with us. And they're so happy to be connected with, and just to raise our vibration. We're in, like, again, like when we walk in nature, our vibration naturally rises, and a rising vibration will naturally attract the goodness that you need, what's next for you. It's a really
Yeah.
deeply organic process. Like, the more we trust that it will all just happen for us, the more it will happen for us.
I think people don't really believe that. I think they think it has to be hard. And that's so simple. It's like, what do I do with that? Just go outside? That's it?
Well, in the old traditions, it was hard. That's the thing, right? Again, this is what I'm shown and I'm experiencing, and other people are as well, is that we're in this new era of awakening. So a generation or two ago, like, the energy of spiritual awakening wasn't as present as it is now. And so it was hard, right? And certainly I was raised on these stories of like, these few lone masters who are in the mountains of the Himalayas in a cave by themselves that you have to go search for far and wide. Like, the awakening story that I grew up with was one of like remote possibility and a very few people in distant, far off lands. And that's not the experience that I have now. That's not the experience of people who are in my circle are now. The experience that I'm exposed
Yeah.
to, that's all around me, is that, again, we're all awakening. Nature is awakening with us, and we're all in this together, supporting each other on this journey. And it's possible for all of us. And it's not hard. It's all of our birthright. It's simple. It's inevitable. It's natural. It's as easy as we want to let it be. It's as easy as we want to let it be. In fact, all the traditions say there's nowhere to go. We're already here. And that doesn't make sense if we're stuck in our mind. But if once we open our spirit and our heart to the connection, those words ring more true, and we realize the beautiful depth of those simple words, that we're already where we need to be.
You say that with conviction. So can you tell me now the awakening story that led to that understanding of non-duality?
Yeah. For me, it was really honoring and deepening because of the traumas and some of the wounding and sorrows I've had in my life has allowed me, prompted me to wake up, right? And in Buddhism, they say, if you're not ready to meditate, if you're not ready to awaken, then more suffering is necessary. And I had been doing decades of work, and I would have these breakthrough experiences, but still then I would drop back and be in my suffering for many, many years. And it really was after a divorce, and I was alone late at night, kind of feeling sorry for myself. And through the grace of the universe, I had a vision wherein I saw myself through the rest of my life on the path that I was on. And I was sort of shown the awareness that I was already energetically dead. I was already, if I lived this path, I was already cut off. I was already small. I was already disconnected. I had already sort of, in that moment, I was defeated. I had sort of given up. And I was already just sort of, there was an emptiness in that path. I was shown that. And immediately I signed up for some men's workshops and some other work. And I decided to embrace life fully. And those workshops exposed me to somatic healing, somatic therapy of various kinds, some somatic modalities that really allowed me to open my heart. And through that heart opening that occurred, then I really connected to spirit again in a way that was real and genuine, because I had surrendered so deeply, right? In that moment of realizing that I was already sort of energetically dead to myself, I just surrendered to what was beyond and said, okay, I can no longer live my life the way I was. I need to just surrender and let the universe take me. And that opened up this connection to spirit that's just been unfolding ever since. And it was about a year later of doing work that I woke up one morning and just realized, I saw the sunrise. I was up early. I saw the sunrise, and the magnificence was greater than anything I could ever imagine. And I just started laughing uncontrollably with joy. And in that moment too, I sort of had this realization of time being like silly putty, everything was malleable and the universe was all present for me. And that there was this thick soup of vibration and aliveness all around me. And that awareness has sort of carried me through to this day. Since then, spirits of all realms have come to me and speak through me for others. And it's really about getting out of the way. It's about getting out of our own way to allow the majesty of the universe to appear.
I'm glad that when you said about seeing yourself as already dead, and then that was like a whoa kind of moment.
Yes.
But then there was a lot of work after that. You talked about, okay, now I had to do this and I had to do that. And I think a lot of people think that the awakening is going to be just like, oh, and now you're at a totally different level and your life is so good. But it is work.
And there's many awakenings, right? I think there's this misnomer. There's this, a lot of traditions that were brought from the East to the West have this sort of singular awakening. Or I think really, as I've delved into it, what I believe is like a mistaken idea of a single awakening that occurs where everything is, and that's not my experience. And that's not, some of the traditions I've studied with have multiple levels of awakening, which I think is more accurate, certainly for what I've experienced. And there's many, many ways, right? There's awakening to just realizing there's more, but you're still then in the same situation. And then again, you have to step into and do the work. And, for what I'm shown, is that we do have to do whatever work we need, which is individual to us, which includes meditation, some type of healing, our shadow work and beyond, to really get beyond the cage of our mind and our thoughts and drop into our heart space. Because the way it's worked for me and the way I experience the world is that our is really the window where our soul connects to all things, where our soul connects to trees, where we can communicate to all the realms. It's really through our hearts and our mind. We just need to let it be and love it and appreciate our thoughts and keeping us safe. But it's not, our mind is not in control of our soul's purpose and our path and our spiritual unfolding. In fact, our mind cannot even really comprehend it. It is often a hindrance to that journey.
Yeah. So when somebody has an awakening and then so I'm looking at it as somebody who hasn't had it yet, okay, and they're anticipating what it's going to be like. How does that change your day to day? Does it change your day to day?
I mean, there has to be some realization that says, and I see people all the time who come to me and they're like, something feels different. What should I do? Right? Because there's already some impulse around, I need to make some change because the things that made me happy before are no longer serving
Yeah.
me. Right? In some way, there's this impulse. The things that I was content with, the things that I was happy with, the things that gave me joy and satisfaction are no longer meeting those needs. And so people cast around for a while and then they realize, oh, there's something greater that I don't know about yet. And then in some way they seek out a book or a teacher or bump into somebody and hear something that pulls them in some direction. And so again, the first steps are cerebral, are our thoughts about realizing, we're thinking that we realize we need to make a change. And then as we make those changes, slowly people realize, oh, maybe it is just recommending for people who are early on the path, walk in nature a little more and breathe deeper. Maybe it's, hey, do you have 2 minutes a day to sit in the morning and meditate? I know you're busy, you have kids, you're whatever, you have your whole life. Do you have 2 minutes every day to sit and meditate and just breathe, right? Maybe it's reminding people to, while they're making food for themselves or their families, to like take a little few more breaths and just put a nourishing prayer into their food and eat with more awareness, right? How do we build in the awakening journey into our modern world, right? Some of these ancient books are like, oh, it should be no problem for anyone to sit for 2 hours a day to meditate. Okay, that's great, right? Okay, but that was written for a different time. So how do we find these moments, right? I tell people all the time, like, at a red light, that it's a minute or two when you stop. Just take a few breaths and check in with your body. Feel your toes, feel your fingers, do a body inventory, check in with your breath. Okay, the light's green, move on again, you're fine, right? When we're eating our lunch, if we're walking to the coffee shop during a break from work, just check in with our breath. We can be in presence, we can be on the path, we can be meditating, we can be aware, we can be connected through all these micro moments throughout the entire day. And then if there's a chance, if there's time or an opportunity for a deeper workshop or connection, a spiritual journey in various ways, those will also appear. But for the first person, you said, for someone who's just waking up, I really recommend these small changes of connection that will then foster, what will happen naturally is that someone who meditates 2 minutes a day will all of a sudden do 20 without realizing it. And someone who takes 5 minutes at a traffic light to breathe will all of a sudden download a meditation app and then check out their local meditation at the studio they go to for yoga and beyond. Life will unfold. Well, it will just naturally deepen.
I have a lot of clients who are heady and they want steps and they want kind of guarantees, I guess. They want, proof, linear, illogical, that kind of thing. You seem to be a kind of curious person, the type of person who says yes and explores things, because I know you're into photography. You mentioned the corporate leadership and ecology. You've been to places like the African rainforest, and I don't mean just to dip your toe in, take a selfie and leave, which is what some people do, but you spent time with the Baka people of the African rainforest. So, how important is curiosity and having experiences?
Curiosity is really a beautiful opening, right? Because knowledge keeps you trapped. When you know everything, then there's no reason. When your mind is certain, creates a box around that part of your energy, and there's no reason to reach out. And really, like, we could say there's many perspectives, but from this viewpoint, the spiritual path is all about curiosity. Hey, what would my life be like if there was more? What would my life be like if I connected deeper to this moment? What would my life be like if I connected deeper to all things? And my journey took me all around the world, living it all over with different peoples and, spending years in the jungle with the Baka and different things like that. Ultimately what you realize is that wherever you go, there you are.
Yeah.
So, but, for me, I needed to go on the journey to break through, to have the experiences to break through my mind. I mean, I have a really strong mind. I think many of us do. I just know I'm trapped in my body with my mind, and it's strong. And, also for years, through my journey, I heard this, what I think is a wrong phrase, or just a little bit misstated, about like, oh, meditation will quiet the mind. And if you quiet the mind, you can be on the journey. And it's like, well, my mind has never really quieted down. I just have a little space between me, my soul, who I am, and my thoughts, which I didn't have when I was younger. But the thoughts are just going. I just I think of my brain as like a fun little kitten that's always playing and nibbling and biting and grabbing onto things and being, but a little bit wild. It does its own thing, right? You can't really tame a kitten very well. But I pet it with love, but it's not me, those energies, that wildness, and the spinning of looping in thoughts and things like that. So wherever we go, we're still trapped in our mind. Whatever the journey is for you, maybe it is just one teacher and you sit and have your path and you work through it, and that's beautiful. In Dzogchen, they have this saying where it's like, the teachings that they know in the original bone tradition from ancient Tibet, they say these teachings have been taught also in, like, I think it's 12 other galaxies across the universes. This is their tradition. These are not ours. We should share them freely, and all people should be able to freely take from the traditions around the universes, because they're all universal. There's this idea of like, the teachings that you need will appear from wherever they need to appear from.
Love the vibe? Join the tribe. It's free, and the link is in the show notes. See you there.
I agree with that. And I think they're always here, all around us. And I think that nature is the greatest teacher, So I know that you have said that too, walk outside, just pay attention. Are there some messages that you have gotten from the rocks, the trees, the stars, or the ancestors
Yeah.
that you could share with us?
Yeah, very, very much. And I receive, I love how you included all of these. I receive messages from rocks. The first time I started to receive messages from rocks, it was like these big granite outcroppings, like this big gorge where there's a huge mass of granite in a place by a river where I've gone my whole life. And sitting there one time by the river, they just started, like, at first for me, it was like a vibration. It was a vibrational healing, but the frequency was so slow, is the way to say it, by our human perspective. And again, the first messages that come through from all of these realms of energy are just like joy to be connected with and recognized as in their sentience. There's so much joy and recognition. And there's a shared vibrational frequency when we recognize, the rocks as alive, the stars as alive, everything as alive, to be connected with. And then they started to transmit, the rocks in particular started to transmit and push messages to me around vibrational healing. And so I've been given actually a really deep vibrational transmission from the granite here in California where I live, and then also in my dreams from the rocks deep in the earth have spread their messages to me. And it was a vibrational healing frequency that's like the elemental frequency from the middle of the earth, which can vibrate through our bodies and reorganize our structure for healing. And so I've been transmitted this, and I use this in my sessions with people. I've also received a similar but very distinct vibrational healing from the crystalline waters deep in the earth. So there's these deep crystalline aquifers under massive pressure that are, of course, mineralized, but otherwise, deeply pure. And because of the pressure and the density where they are on the earth, like the water structure and the crystals are deeply aligned and pure in a way that heals us. There's a vibrational frequency from that crystalline structure that we can receive. And it does restructure our bodies and align us in a way of healing and connection as well. So those are some, they're messages, and they're also gifts of healing that I've received from the water and the rocks.
Well, it makes sense. I think because everything is connected, of course, it wants to talk to us and to give us ways of healing that we can share with other people if we're just willing to listen.
That's right. Exactly. And in this time of awakening, almost every conversation I have with people, I recommend go outside, spend more time with the trees, touch the grass, be barefoot, look at the lake, jump in the river, jump in the ocean, wherever you are, seek that time out. And that's always my advice. And I mentioned I used to be a scientist. I used to be an ornithologist, which is a which I used to study birds. And I knew everything about the birds I was studying. I knew everything. And now I know more about the birds just from quietly listening to them and communicating with them and asking them themselves what they want to tell me about their lives. The birds and the insects and the trees that feed them. We can receive more information just by receptive listening than by knowing. I know this because I was one way where the more I knew about the birds, the more I realized I knew nothing. And now I just connect and speak with them, and they just give me their mysteries because they're so happy to share. They're so happy
Yeah.
to share.
Yeah. And two, I think just being out in nature and being open to listening and hearing and sharing and being a part of it rather than separate or competitive with it, it does something really wonderful for reducing the fear because now we're part of it. It's nothing to be scared of.
Yes, I mean, this was a lesson I learned from living with the Baka in Cameroon for a couple of years. There were, this indigenous hunter-gatherer group that's been in the forest since beyond time, who knows? And, what they showed me, which took me, a long time to really even understand, was just how deeply they are a part of the forest, where, I grew up with the mythology that there's us and nature. And even in college, I was an ecologist and a conservationist, where I, as a human, was going to go and save nature or fix it or protect it, right? That's still an outside influence on nature, as opposed to just, we're all one. We're all one. And even living with the Baka, like when we would sing, they would say, I remember this, and it struck me at the time, like this actually struck me deeply and landed in my heart, was like, oh, we're playing, they were very musical and would sing songs and play songs. And they would sing with the forest. They would sing with the water, with the trees, and they would say this, we're singing with the forest. And that struck me as like, oh, that means the forest is also singing with you. Right?
That
We are
makes
in this
sense.
in union. And that
Yeah.
was through the music, was one of the ways that I first was able to comprehend and receive this message from them, just how deeply integrated the wisdom is. When they would be these hunter gatherers. So we would collect the fruit seasonally as it would drop and ripen in the forest. And when some of the fruits that were larger, really yummy fruits would ripen, they'd be so excited and be like, we're going to become like this tree, and give the name of the tree of those fruits during the season. This is a season when we become like this tree. We become part of this tree, is how they would say it.
That is so awesome. I think you can really get a sense of people through the words that they use, and you can see how deeply connected they are to nature.
Yes. Yeah. And we, that unity gives, as you mentioned, it does give the peace when we open our hearts and realize that we're all one thing, that we're supported, that we're nurtured,
Yeah.
that we're fed, that we're all one thing. There's no separation. If we're separate, we need to save and scrimp and, and like hoard for ourselves because we're alone in this. Even if even with our families, we're still individually alone in this. When we're all one, then there's nothing to take, because take from what? For
Right.
what?
Yeah.
What is there to take from or for if we're all one thing? And we are one. We're all sharing the abundance of everything. And when one is in need, it is received. Yeah, everything is here for us.
And at the same time, though, we do live in a world where there's threat of war in the Middle East and Russia, and there's the drones flying around, and are there aliens and all of this? So, I mean, I guess there are things that maybe people are concerned about, but what would you say to them about how do you deal with those kinds of fears, or even like the fear of dying?
For sure. No, and so I love you. Thank you for saying that this question. It's really important to be clear on where we're speaking from. And there is always, I have this body, I'm alive on this earth. And from this perspective of like me in this body, I have immense compassion for all those who are suffering in all the ways, right? Our individual bodies experience pain, our individual bodies experience traumas in all the ways. And that's horrific. It can be for so many people. And I've lived through whatever I've lived through. We all have experienced these things that have hurt us, some more than others. And so holding that compassion for all the suffering that we experience, there's also an experience and awareness that our souls are eternal. And so in the eternal unity of our souls, holding the compassion for the individual suffering, We have to hold both perspectives. For the eternal soul that already knows it's connected to all things, they actually choose. This is what I'm shown by my guides, is that our souls actually choose Earth. We come here specifically to be disconnected from source so that we can find our way back through this reconnection, through this process of awakening. And this can happen through our lifetimes, through this process of spiritual awakening, or it can also happen at death, when with certainty we all are reunited with our eternal oneness. We're all reunited with our eternal oneness. All of us. And so I am shown, and this is a hard thing for people, and I, again, with all compassion to the suffering that we experience, our souls choose the lives we live, and where and when and how, and know before we come here the nature of our death. And that's for people, even when I think about myself, when I've been in suffering and pain and anger and torment in various ways, when I hear this, it can easily be seen as dispassionate or something like that. And it's not. It's, holding the compassion and keeping these two perspectives simultaneously held as both true, right? The suffering is painful and awful and terrible, and we have compassion and love for those people experiencing this. And also, everything is perfectly aligning as it needs to be. And we're all one in this experience. So the suffering is also our suffering. The suffering of the war, wherever it might be in the world, across the globe, is my suffering. I feel this pain. And there's this hollow and this shadow and this hurt that I experience in the oneness of the universe. But our souls are here beyond that and have so many experiences across all of time that in the bigger picture, it's okay. In the bigger picture, it's part of the process of why we're here, is to experience all of the pain and all of the joy. The pain is necessary to show us how much joy is possible, right? We can't only have the joy. We have to also, as a society, as a unit of oneness here on Earth, in the Earth realm, experience all the pain, the horror, and the separation and the grief, to experience how beautiful the love and unity is. All of it is the same.
Now, maybe it sounds like it's really easy for you to say that. And maybe that's your personal experience. Maybe that comes from your experience as a medium or someone who can read the Akashic records. I think having a skill where you can see, or maybe it's your spirit guides, like you said, where you have access to other information rather than just your own eyes, ears, and what you can sense, gives you a leg up. So what do the Akashic records say? Anything?
Well, the Akashic records, yeah. So I love that question, and I'll just jump into the first part of what you said. That absolutely, like, going to the records on a daily basis, supporting people across all different types of situations from around the world who come and talk to me, and being in these expanded realms does give me a leg up, as you say, simply because I'm sort of in the soup of expansive experience in a way that I wasn't when I was doing other things for a profession, for example. The Akashic records, right? There's lots of ways to talk about them, but they're a frequency band where all information across all time is held. So what they show, they don't predict the future, or they show us what is. They do contain the future, but that's also, there's no time. So that's also now. But what they show is that, the vastness of experience across time, all of us have lived so many experiences and have had so many dips at the well, if we wish, of all the ways that we can experience humanity, experience this earth, experience other realms as well, that any experience we're having here, number one, is connected to experiences beyond our five senses, absolutely. And two, is but a small path in our soul's journey. Like, our view with our five senses and our experience of time is but a drop in the bucket to who we really are. And so, our spirit guides teach a little bit different lesson in that, they're here, the angels and guides of various sorts. They come through and we all have them. And what they tell me for every single person, and they ask me to share this continuously, is that we are all so deeply held. We are all so deeply loved. We are all so deeply supported. And the way to feel that and connect with that is through our hearts, to open up with a longing and open up to something beyond ourselves and say, yes, I want to connect with you. Yes, I acknowledge you. Yes, I feel you. When we acknowledge the coincidences of a perfect parking spot, when we acknowledge the way things just unfold for us in ways that seem miraculous, when we acknowledge bumping into a friend or a stranger that we have a conversation with and it opens doors for us, these little ways that the world orchestrates itself for us and unfolds magically. When we acknowledge those little moments that all of us in our own way experience and deepen our acceptance and our gratitude for those moments, they unfold and expand for us, and we get more and more connection. And so that pipeline of wonder can expand. And that wonder and that love that comes through from our guides, from our angels, and from this vastness of experience provides the calm and the acceptance of like, I don't know when I'm going to die. I live in the mountains where there's windy roads. Sometimes it's icy and slippery, like right now in the wintertime. And there are some days when I'm caught in some conditions where like, ooh, I almost slipped off the side, like whatever. That was a recent experience last week where I was like, oh, that was a close one. I got a little slippery and I was close to the edge and it was a steep drop off. Where whatever happens is exactly as it's meant to be.
Yeah.
And we don't control, when we try to control our life, all of us, I think, have some experience of knowing like how maybe disastrously that can go. And we think we know how life should go. And we try to stick to that with some like, perspective. But when we just allow life to unfold as it does, then it is what it is. And we can just accept it as perfection, or we could fight against it. But what good does that do?
But I think that's where the magic comes in, because when I certainly have let go and just be in the moment and let life unfold the way that it has, that's when the most miraculous things that I never could have planned happen.
Because then we're in the river. There is
Yeah.
this flow of energy that we're moving with. There is this flow of energy. And this flow of energy is what supports, when a seed from a tree falls and it grows up, it's in this flow of energy, and it will maybe be a small tree, or maybe it's a big tree that lasts thousands of years. Maybe it's a small tree that will be harvested for some firewood. Is that a tragedy? I don't know. The trees, they will just be what they are, and we're in the same flow, and we have this mind. We try to make some sense and pretend that we're not, or we have different experiences, but we're in the same flow as a seed landing and growing into a tree, and then maybe it's in some old growth forest and it lives forever. And maybe it's cut for firewood in 2 years and burned up in a fireplace. And then whatever else happens to that energy, these are both equivalent and beautiful outcomes. And they're both inherently, they're both perfectly neutral, right? There really is, this is also a really I want to say this in a really careful, nuanced way, and acknowledging the range of experience that all people have. But the universe itself, there's no real good or bad. We have this gradient of experience, and some of it might be harmful or difficult for me, but there's this range of experience of neutrality. This is also I learned in the jungle, right? I mean, everything's eating everything. Everything's living and dying and being reborn in various forms and being digested and composted and growing up. And there's this cacophony of life. And so when we look beyond the smallness of the individual, oneness of the individual I, we can land in this vastness of acceptance.
Now, Aaron, you are a transformational teacher. What do you teach and how do you teach?
I do individual sessions with people where I work as a mentor, and that could be sort of individually tailored for people in the spiritual path, whether they're just starting off on the path and need some guidance on how to get going. Or I work with a lot of people who are deeper on the path and maybe moving into higher states of non-duality and unity with all things, but unsure how to stabilize that for themselves. I love working with those people and really provide a grounding knowledge and understanding and energetic transmission of the unity of all things. So I do those individual sessions. I'm also teaching a few courses coming up, one of which is I'm calling Unlocking the Secret of the Golden Flower, which is really about dropping into our heart space. It's based on a Taoist book from a couple hundred years ago, which is a very modern sort of treatment of Taoism, where they synthesize all the knowledge from a 5,000-year tradition into a small little book of all the secrets. But even then, the secrets are very sort of obtuse and mysterious. So we'll take a journey of meditation, transmission of non-duality, transmission of unity of all things, as well as breath work, connection with the universe. It'll be a deep immersive journey. So that's a program started up in January, in the middle of January. I do Akashic readings. I do some shadow healing sessions with people to work with them to release their shadow and blockages so we can connect with our hearts more deeply. My website, Natural Heart Alchemy, has all of those details, and also my Instagram.
It's interesting because I thought that your specialty was working with men.
Well,
No?
yeah. So then I also,
Okay.
there's exactly. So then I also have a men's group, and there's a new round starting up in January Thank you. I have a few things that I'm offering. So I have a new round of men's work opening up in January. And this work, thank you for asking this. This work is around working with men to activate the magic within. And the magic within from this perspective is not about, spells and wands. It's about dropping into your heart space, knowing yourself and feeling the magic of connection with all things. What I love to say is that, the goal of this path of magic, of mystery, of becoming a wizard is when we drop deep enough into ourselves and know ourselves so fully, we don't need to cast a spell, because as soon as it's thought of, it's already enacted in the universe, because we are the universe, right? We become the spell. And so there's a deep path work specifically for men. There are other programs for women that I could recommend to all the sisters who are also interested in magical connection with the universe. But there's a lot of men's work that's really deeply focused on the path of the warrior. And I wanted to offer this program to offer a counterpoint. There's many ways into the divinity of our individual selves. And this is the path of magic and wonder.
So the word wizard jumped out at me, and I want you to go into that. So for people who don't understand that archetype, what do you mean by wizard?
Yeah. So, there's lots of ways that all of the magical words have been sort of either cast away as being a fairy tale, or even sort of made kind of a joke, or made sort of juvenile for kids, right? And this is true for men and women. And increasingly, there's these energies of connection, right? So I would say, being a wizard would be someone who is comfortable moving out in nature and talking to trees, right? Who holds the power within ourselves to expand our connection, right? Our magical power is our connection to the world around us, however we want to use that. And so a magician might be someone who is earlier on the path and needs to use a spell to connect, or use an intention or a prayer, right? These are all words that have come across time through traditions, but a spell, a prayer, as I'm using them, would be the same thing. An intention, even a manifestation, which is common in our society right now. We're going to manifest this. Well, that's a type of a prayer, a type of a spell that we're casting. But again, as we deepen into our wizardness, then we're in our heart space, and we're spiritually open to the universe. And therefore we are acting naturally and in harmony with the world around us. And the world unfolds for us fully with us in harmony. So this is the wizardry that I'm teaching and speaking of.
And I love that you're working with men, because I don't see that a lot. There's lots and lots and lots of stuff for women.
Yes.
And there's not a lot for men, and there's not a lot that I see that's focused on this. So there might be like corporate development and how to make more money, how to scale, and those kinds of things. But it's not really the inner work or the grounding and spiritual. So both spectrums of that for men. So I really love that.
Thank you so much. And I'll say, like, most of the people that come to me are women, right? And I know most of the people that, do Akashic readings and do this work I do, most of my colleagues are women, not all of them, but most of them. But there's no reason that's inherently so. It's just that over the last several thousand years in Western society, these ideas, these pathways have been pushed aside and cast aside, and now they're becoming safe again for all of us to reclaim with our true power and our true glory. And so it's time, yeah. And I have some brothers who are doing some similar work, but it's time for the men through all the pathways to step up and claim our power back. And there's many ways that we can do that. Some of those ways are the way of the warrior. Some of those ways are the way of the wizard. There's other archetypes as well. And, we're all welcome. But, I'll say too, I created this program because I was seeing my friends and colleagues who are women creating programs that, priestess training and different types of training for women. And I was like, okay, but where is that for men? And I didn't find it. I didn't find it. So I'm creating it for the men. And have created
because I think if you are a woman and you're owning that energy, you want a man who can be your equal and stand beside you. And where are they?
And I see so many of my friends, so many women, that I know, who are looking for this certain type of energy, which is not what's popularized in society. In movies, you're not seeing this archetype being put forward right now. And if you are, it might be kind of a jokester, kind of like the, sort of a marginalized side story of the story. But these are archetypes. These energies are rising, right? These energies of awakening are happening, and we're all being activated in new ways. And so I'm here to support those men who are called to come forward and claim their power in this really deep way.
That's awesome.
Yeah, thank you.
Aaron, I love talking with beautiful people who are living beautiful, authentic lives. And I think there is nothing so worthwhile than to shine that light that the Creator gave us. So thank you, because you appear to be doing that. So thanks for sharing that with us.
Thanks so much. It's been a joy. Thanks so much.
And now I'd love to hear from the audience. What'd you think? Is there a question you wish I'd asked? Let me know. And if you haven't checked out my free group, check out the show notes for that link. We talk about cool stuff like this with open-minded, grounded people, and who doesn't want that? So thanks for listening, and I'll see you over there. Ciao.
Make sure to subscribe to the show on iTunes or Spotify so you'll never miss a show. While you're at it, if you found value in this show, why not show your love with a review? Thanks. See you next week.